Welcome again to Discovering Disabilities in Dearborn. As always, I'm Ali Darwish.
I'm Mohammed Awada.
And I'm Rashad Al Ghul.
And today we have a special guest, Wahbeh. If you would like to introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, my name is Wahbeh Nusayba. I'm 23 years old, resident of Dearborn, Michigan, and I have Spina Bifida.
Okay. So we want to touch on, well, thank you, first of all, for being here. You're the first guest who has a physical disability that we have. So hopefully we can talk about your experiences and delve a little deep into that. But first and foremost, can you tell us a little bit more about Spina Bifida and explain to us what it is?
So Spina Bifida is a neurological birth defect. So what it is an opening in the spinal column when an infant is born. So there isn't a closure in the spinal cord. The spinal cord is exposed when the child is born, causing paralysis.
Okay. So before talking about all of that, because we can talk about these things and like the physiological implications associated with them, but let's talk about more about how do you feel being on a podcast?
This is actually my first experience on a podcast. It's really interesting. I hope it's a good experience.
Yeah, hopefully it will be. Okay, and how did having Spina Bifida affect you growing up?
Well, it affects every aspect of my life as a child and even now as an adult. During when I was a child, I was in a wheelchair for most of my life. I am in a wheelchair and was in a wheelchair for most of my life growing up. I was required to go to many therapies, physical therapies, occupational therapies, and I've had over 20 surgeries, anything from spinal surgeries to hip surgeries, any foot surgeries.
Okay. So, when was your first surgery? When did you have your first major surgery? In I know personally, I don't know personally, but I've heard that spinal surgeries are very dangerous. But it seems like your surgeries are a very routine thing. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
They can be very dangerous, and they require skilled professionals to implement them. My first ever surgeries actually was hours after I was born. They had to, being born with spina bifida, there was a closure. There was an opening to my spinal column and the nerves, my spinal cord. And what can happen is infection can happen, which is called meningitis, and then which can kill somebody. So they have to go in right away and close up that opening that happens.
Is that something they routinely test for to see if anybody has spina bifida, or is it was something for example, when you were born, did anything lead them to want to look into it further, or do they just do routine checks like that?
So they, I believe that I'm pretty sure they know before you're born that you have spina bifida. I was born over 20 years ago, but now with new scientific research and studies, they found ways where they can fix that repair for the child in the mother's womb. So they're able to fix a repair even before the child is born, with minimal effects on the child.
Yeah, and something I've seen, I've met a few other individuals who do have spina bifida. Something I've seen is it can manifest differently, and it could affect different individuals to different extents.
That's very true. Spina bifida can affect it. The way it affects is where the defect is on the spinal cord. So where the location is. So there's different vertebrae on the spinal cord. So the lumbar, the thoracic, the
cervical, and all
cervical,
of that.
Yeah, all that. So wherever it lands is where it affects.
Okay. We have a doctor behind the scenes, so he probably knows more about that stuff than we do. But it's all very interesting. When people first see you, on a wheelchair, do they ask you any questions just growing up? Walk us through like how it's been just growing up in Dearborn, and how it's like navigating on a wheelchair, and how you're looked at by individuals in our community.
So, so to me, being in a wheelchair and having a disability is something that I'm used to. I was born with it. It's not like someone who who was in a car accident and now has paralysis from that car accident and has to live this whole new life in a wheelchair. For me, it was being in a wheelchair was something that just was a part of my life. It never defined me as a person. It just was a method of moving from one place to another. Of course, there's people. There's gonna see you in different ways. People are gonna give you looks. It's just how you take that and what you use to feel.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very good. It's very interesting how different people have different perspectives. But most of people with various kinds of disabilities, I've noticed, don't see it defining them and see it just as something that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So it's very interesting you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I had a question that I wanted to ask you. Oh, so do you have sensation in your legs?
No, so I don't have any movement or sensation.
You don't have any movement or sensation
Yeah.
in your legs. Okay. If let's just suppose there is treatment for it in the future, how would you feel about that?
So this actually has good thing that you brought this up, because so there are many research studies being done right now, and some of the I think a month ago or so, there's new research study came out where they're putting an implant in people's spinal cord, where it's making them be able to walk again. And from a perspective of someone that doesn't have that disability, it's like, oh, you're gonna get cured again. But to look back on the research and the studies that are actually being done, it's a very intensive work, and these participants who are going through these studies and getting these stimulators being put in, are actually having to go to 40 hours a week of therapy, intensive therapy. It's just not like the magic button that we're going to put this thing inside your body and you're going to magically start walking. No, it's a lot of hard work, and it's sometimes you have to weigh the
Pros and the cons.
the pros and the cons,
Yeah.
and to make sure that is it something that is suitable for your lifestyle.
It kind of reminded me of something. Sorry, Wada. It kind of reminded me of, I don't know if you guys heard about that guy who needed, he didn't need it, but they were planning on executing a surgery that's never been done before of a head transplant. Did you guys hear about that story?
Yeah.
Oh, can you tell us about it?
So basically, there's this guy who was paralyzed basically from the neck down, and very, very small. I don't know the exact nature of his disability. And then there was this Italian physician who has done many successful surgeries on mice where he transplants their head across different bodies, right? And he wanted to do the same surgery on a human being. And this guy was a candidate for that surgery. I don't know what ended up happening. I think either the individual with the disability ended up passing away, or they decided against it for some reason. But going back to what you were saying, people often have these idealized pictures of a treatment, and they don't often look at the implications behind it or the complexity behind it, similar to what you were saying.
So you're talking about lifestyle and hard work earlier, and we were talking to you a bit before we started recording. You're up to a lot of things. You said earlier that you're going to school. Do you want to share like the other stuff that you're up to, your business? And
Yeah, so currently I go to school full time at Wayne State University. I'm 1 year into 1 year to complete my bachelor's degree in special education. with a concentration in cognitive impairments. Other than that, with that, I'm also a student teacher at Henry Ford Elementary School in the third grade classroom.
That's awesome. So you're working directly with students with with disabilities right now?
It's a general education classroom.
Okay.
But there are so a good a thing that I was very happy to see when I went into the general education classroom is that students who have disabilities were being put in the general education classrooms and being included in what their same age peers were doing, even though that they had that disability, they weren't excluded from what their friends were doing.
That's awesome. Were they there like alone, or did some of them have like parapros or aides?
So it's a base. So what they do is, when a student comes into this the school system, and so they see what their needs are, and they create what's called an individualized education plan, and from there on they get services based on their needs. So if they need that parapro to be with them with the classroom to help them, or they need speech services or physical therapy services, they can still have that with still being in that being in that general education classroom.
Okay, so how does the process of getting an IEP work? Could you just kind of explain to us?
So it's a very long and complicated process. It's what an IEP is. It's a legal document between the school and the family, which states the services. So a person needs to have a disability. The student needs to have a disability, and then the IEP lays out what services and accommodations that the student needs to be successful during their education.
Growing up in Dearborn Public Schools, did you have an IEP made for you or any sort of accommodations?
Yes. So from preschool all the way, I believe, up to fifth grade, I had an IEP, which even if I had an IEP, I was still mainstreamed in with my same age peers. But from sixth grade all the way to high school, I had what's called a 504 plan, and it's kind of the same concept as an IEP, but this is gives you accommodations for like physical things, so like access to an elevator, access to like a handicap stall bathroom, wheelchair access, or a specialized seat, or sitting in front of the classroom, stuff like that.
Would you feel that your needs were accommodated properly for the most part? Or?
So, for the most part, I would. A big thing that played a big role in meeting the needs of what needed to happen to meet my needs was my parents were very big advocates for me all throughout my elementary school career. At one point, at one school, I was almost denied services to be in that school, and then my parents fought and advocated for me to be in that school with my same age peers, with my with the people that were around me. So I owe a lot to them to be that advocates, and I feel to be successful for a person with a disability, they need to have that advocate that can fight for them and push for them to get the services and supports that they need.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a honor to have parents like that who advocate for you and try to include you and not make you feel any different than anyone else. It's you seem like you have awesome parents.
Yeah,
that's very good.
That's a blessing. Yeah,
that is definitely a blessing.
Does that influence some of the work that you do? Because you did tell us you work with.
Oh, definitely. My parents influence everything that I do every day. they like little they. So I have a sibling, a brother, and they don't treat me any different than they would treat him. So they don't see the disability, they don't see it as a barrier. They don't. Even my brother doesn't see my disability as a barrier. He wouldn't treat me any different if I wasn't disabled, and I appreciate that. They don't see they see me first, and then they see the disability.
Right.
So transitioning from like family to friends now, how would you say your social life is outside of family? You know, especially like growing up and up to this point and even now. Did you feel like it was maybe easier to make friends or harder to make friends, or socially, how were you in those environments?
So it wasn't hard. Very at the beginning, it was very. It is very hard. It was very hard to make friends, because I was seen as different. I wasn't like the other students. I wasn't playing around on the swing sets or going down the slides. So I was different to them, and kids are very good at picking up on stuff like that. But when you get to know somebody and know them for who they truly are, I think that just goes away, that aspect. So a big thing when I went into student teaching, I was really afraid of like what the kids thought of me being a teacher in a wheelchair. Would they not have respect for me? Would they think I was like, how would they see me as like a teacher? Because they didn't have, I was probably the first person ever they met in a wheelchair or whatever. So how would they react to me being their teacher? And to my surprise, they took it very well. They don't see the wheelchair. They see me as Mr. Wahbeh. They don't ask about, they ask, but like, for me, the thing is, people think it's bad to ask questions. It's not bad to ask questions. They're curious. They're kids. They can ask questions.
That's how they learn. Yeah.
How about older people asking you questions? I'm sure like you notice people looking at you. I mean, we see different people just who appear differently than a normal person, quote unquote, gets a lot of stares. You know, my mom wears a headscarf and she gets a lot of stares, let alone a person on a wheelchair. I'm sure you get a lot of stares. Would you prefer a person coming up to you, asking you questions if they're really curious?
Most definitely. I would rather much somebody come up to me and be like, hi, and have a conversation about my disability than just stare at me from like 10 feet away. Because that's just awkward, and it makes an awkward situation for the both of us.
Yeah, I believe that, because right when I asked you, do you want to be on the podcast, no further question, you're like, yeah, let's do it. And that made me smile.
That's awesome. How about like certain things, like people helping you around doing certain things? Like, do you like it when people open the door for you or help you out in a physical way? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's just like opening the doors. It's just like you can open the door for anyone. It's just a polite thing to do. But like, if it's something like pushing me or something, helping, like if I'd rather somebody ask than just come to the conclusion that I can't do something.
Right.
So always veer on the caution of let the person with the disability ask for help, because we are capable of asking help and we are capable of having that independence.
Speaking of capable, you brought up, I know we were talking a little bit before this about sports that you liked, and you talked about some sports that you play. Could you tell us a little bit about your favorite sport and how you engage in it?
So my favorite sport is actually is basketball. Ever since I was a kid, since I was like maybe 6 or 7 years old, my parents enrolled me in this traveling wheelchair basketball team, and we used to travel all around the country, play in tournaments with other individuals with disabilities. It was such a great experience, and I would never trade it for the world. It gave me great opportunities to go to new places, meet new friends, see new people. It was just a place to hang out and be with people that had disabilities that I could relate to in a different sense than other people that don't have disabilities.
Do you still keep up with those people now?
Oh, definitely. Some of them that I met through basketball are some of my best friends.
I have a few friends who play wheelchair basketball at U of M, and I played it once, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was so difficult. You just need so much hand-eye coordination, and it's tiring. It's so much more tiring. I think it's harder than actual basketball. I'm not good at both, but no, it was very
Maybe
fun.
stick to soccer.
Yeah, I'll probably just stick to soccer. It was very fun though, and that's awesome. Are you still playing it like actively or when?
No, not right now. I'm just so busy. I have so much going on in my life right now. So I go, like I said before, I go to school. I am a full time. So I go to school, and then I teach. I student teach at Henry Ford Elementary, as well as I work full time as a registered behavior technician. That involves doing ABA therapy with kids and young adults that have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder.
Could you tell us a little bit more about like the process of working with a person with autism?
Great experience that came to me when I so initially this opportunity came to me when I was volunteering for my doctor's office. My doctor she has a multidisciplinary clinic that solely deals with kids and young adults with developmental disability. So at this clinic, we provide medical, social work, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and ABA therapy for kids and young adults with developmental disability. So developmental disability can be anything like cerebral palsy, spina bifida, autism, Down syndrome, and then about 5-6 years ago, they opened this new autism clinic, and they were hiring. So I wanted to take on this new journey and be like to see if I liked it or not working. If you asked me when I was in high school if I ever wanted to work with kids, I would have told you no way.
Yeah.
But now that I'm in it, it's like a totally different experience. I wouldn't want to do anything else.
So why did you pursue these fields of serving people with disabilities?
I think it just I chose these fields because there is a demand for them, a need for them. So there's always opportunities to grow and stuff, and there's a high need for them. The prevalence rate of autism is so high right now, and there is need for these kids to be seen and be provided with services so that they can live a functional life with their families.
Yeah, I worked as an ABA therapist for 6 months, and I was lucky to have the opportunity. You said you've been doing it for quite some time. Like, have you gone through that process of starting out with a client and then getting them to the point where they graduate out of the program?
Yeah, so I've had about 3 clients where I started with them and then watched them graduate into either kindergarten or first grade. Or yeah, it's to see the growth from where they started to where they are now is amazing.
So if we switch gears a little here, right, and we go off of like the busier side of your life, right? What do you like to do, like as like for leisure? Hobbies or activities or things that help you get away kind of from your work life and school life, things like that.
So I just like to go outside. I have an adapted bike that I can use to pedal with my hands. It was granted through a foundation called, I don't know if you guys know it, called Make-A-Wish. Mm-hmm. So it's this foundation where they grant wishes for people, for children with disabilities, and you get to make one wish for your whole life. You just get to make that one wish, either go to Disneyland or go to wherever, Hawaii, wherever you want to go, or whatever you want to get. So I chose to get this bike,
How old were you when you made that wish?
I think I was 7 years old, and it was kind of a big deal. They made it like a big deal. I remember like
Sounds like a big deal.
it was
It is
a
a
big
big
deal.
deal.
The news came to my house.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you can choose between Hawaii and all of these other things, it seems like a big decision. And,
Yeah.
you know, as they say, be careful what you wish for.
And I don't know if you guys know the mascot of the Detroit Pistons, Hooper. They
Yeah.
also came to my house.
Wow.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
it was like a big event.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you still have that bike.
Yeah.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about it. Like,
So it's a modified bike. It's like a tricycle, and you pedal with your arms instead of your legs, basically.
oh, that's
Yeah.
so cool. That's very cool. Okay.
Other than that, for leisure, I 2 years ago, I believe now it's been so long. I started my own business, doing flower arrangements. That kind of gives me that leisure activity where it's like peaceful and not. But sometimes it can be stressful. Not gonna lie.
You have an Instagram page for
Yeah.
it? So we'll make sure to drop it in the link below. But if you want to shout
Yeah.
out your handle real quickly.
It's elegance_florals.
Okay.
Elegance
All right.
underscore florals. Nice.
So we do like it's like I was talking about. It's kind of relaxing, but at the same time, it is like stressful. You know, dealing with weddings and brides and flower arrangements and making sure deliveries is on time. But
Is it only you, like, who works on the floral arrangements?
no, I've turned it into like a family thing
Okay.
where I get all my family involved. I'm like, I'm not doing this all by myself. I'm getting everyone involved.
And
Yeah.
this was your idea when? When did
Uh,
you think about this idea?
I think like maybe 2-3 years ago. It has to been like 3 years ago now.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So, real quick, if we're about to take our break right now, but real quick before that, that seems like to me that personally that's very inspiring. You know, like thinking of something like that where you can have fun, you know, doing something that you enjoy doing, and also providing something for others, right? So, what's like a message you have for our viewers out there, or just anybody out there in general, of how they could, you know, turn a passion into something where they can like help the world, basically help other people and provide for other people.
It's never impossible, really. If you set your mind to it, you can do whatever you want to do. Like, anything you do in your life, if you work really hard at it and don't give up, even if people try to knock you down and stuff, you just get back up and you do it. Try again and try again and try again.
I
Yeah.
think that's a great point to take our break. We'll be back shortly, guys.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you or someone you know would be interested in being a guest on the podcast, or if you have any feedback, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram at DreamDearborn, or on our website at dreamdearborn.org, or on our email at disabilitiesproject@umich.edu. Thank you.
Welcome back to Discovering Disabilities in Dearborn. Over the break, we talked a little bit more about the adaptable bike, and Wahbeh had talked to us a little bit about the adaptable driving. Would you like to talk to us more about it? 'Cause
Yeah, so through high school, like any kid when when they're in high school, a big thing, goal that they want to achieve before finishing high school is being able to drive, and to getting their learner's permit, and then going through that segment 1, segment 2, getting their learner's permit, and then being able to drive, getting our license to drive. At first, I thought that was something very unattainable for me. And I was like, how am I going to drive? But through venues of like different researches I did and help through different doctor's offices, I thought that that thing that I thought was very unattainable was very much a reality that I could do. It was a process. It's a different process than a typically developing person would have to do. So they can't. It's not just going in for your segment 1, segment 2, getting your learner's permit. No, it's you have to go through this evaluation process by a physical therapist and an occupational therapist to see what your needs are, and so that they are able to meet your needs, so that you can be able to function a car safely and effectively.
Do you like have to get checked on like more frequently than a person who doesn't have a physical disability?
So no, the biggest thing is that first evaluation.
Okay.
To make sure what equipment do you need in that vehicle to make it so that the person driving is most successful.
So how are you driving?
So what I have is a 2013 Dodge Grand Caravan, and that vehicle has been modified to have. So usually there's that middle row seat. That middle row seat is taken out, and then a lift, or not a lift, a ramp is put in, and so it can give me access to get into the vehicle. And then to actually drive, they take out the original manufactured driver's seat and put a modified 6-way seat, which is basically a seat that can go up and down, front and back, left and right. So that gives me access to be able to safely get into the vehicle and transfer from my wheelchair into the driver's seat.
So on the note of transportation and just like getting from place to place, I remember you mentioned that your family immigrated here from Jordan. Could you, and you visited frequently, correct? Could you kind of talk to us more about like your experiences, like going to Jordan? Just walk us through like going on the airplane and what that entails.
Yeah, so it's not as easy as typically. It's not just like going through checks, just putting your shoes down. No, it's very precise screening that you need to do before you even get on that flight. First of all, you're like searched by a TSA officer. Then then my wheelchair gets swiped down and put like they put it in the machine to make sure there's no like chemicals or weapons or whatever. And then it's thoroughly searched. Everything's thoroughly searched. And then when you get onto that gate, you have to request aisle seating, which basically means a chair specifically designed to be fitted into airplanes. Because my everyday chair that I'm using right now will not fit into the aisles of a airplane. The aisles of an airplane are very narrow, so what they do is transfer me from my chair into the aisle chair, which then they transfer me into the airplane chair.
You know, you just mentioned something that reminded me of a recent post I saw on Facebook by Dr. Okunlami. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I actually saw him online when I was researching about like people with disabilities and with different career.
Right.
And he's one that came up, and another one that I knew very personal is Dr. Corinne Morosco. She works with him, kind of in the same
Michigan Medicine.
They both work in Michigan Medicine, and they both have disabilities.
Yeah, so the reason why I mentioned Dr. O in particular, he's an awesome guy. If you guys don't know him, he has an amazing story. Check him out. But Dr. Okunlami recently made this post on Facebook complaining about his wheelchair being broken. As he, I think he was traveling or something. He was going from one state to another on the airplane. His wheelchair broke. I don't know if you had any experience with that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I've had very similar experiences with this. Parts are lost off my wheelchair. Parts are broken. Like, they treat the chair like garbage. Wow. And I don't understand why. It's just, why do you treat the chair like such garbage? Yeah. It got to the point where I was so frustrated one year that I actually typed out, before I traveled, the night before, I typed out on a piece of paper, this is my wheelchair. This is how these are what I use to move. These are like my legs. Please take care. thank you. And I stuck that on my wheelchair to like get the message of like, take care of my wheelchair. I need it.
Did that get the message across, hopefully?
Oh, I think it did.
Mhm.
Yeah. I made sure that I was like so done.
No, the thing that surprised me the most about Dr. O's post was he mentioned after complaining to Delta, they told him that he doesn't have sufficient proof that they were the ones who caused it.
Yeah.
So, you know, they kind of like blamed it on him.
It happens so much frequent, too much. It happens too frequently, than it should. People all the time. I see it. I follow a lot of people with disabilities, and it's always on my feed. Oh, I traveled to this place and my chair came back missing pieces, or I traveled. Like, this should not be a thing that people with disabilities have to go through.
So now that we've discussed a little bit about the actual mode of transportation from getting to from one place to another, can you tell us a little bit about like how disabilities are perceived, or the differences in how they're perceived, if there are differences between here in America and in Jordan where you were born?
Oh yeah, definitely. Not just in Jordan, and we're not going to single out Jordan. I feel like it's just a overall problem that people with disabilities are perceived different than they are perceived here. I feel like they're treated like less. They're not expected to be active members of society. They're expected to just stay home and just sit there all day and all night and not be active members of society. They're not expected to have jobs or go to school, which I think is so wrong, because these people can have great impacts on society and the world.
That's a pretty big culture shock. I think it can be interpreted differently by a lot of people. You take that more as like something that motivates you. You kind of want to prove it wrong. Is it something that you had to like adjust to?
Oh yeah, definitely. When I go there and they're like not just relatives, like friends who come over from there, and when I go visit, they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I tell them all these things that they do, and it's like they have like this look at their face, like, "You do all this stuff?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, it's okay that I go to school. It's okay. And the one time I was trying to leave home for university, I wanted to go to the Illinois University of Illinois to finish my degree, and it was such a not to my parents, because they don't see they see that disability second, but like aunts and uncles and like older members in the family, they were like, no, you can't leave because what's gonna happen to you?
Yeah.
They didn't see me as being independent and being able to live on my own.
Yeah, I think that's the in disability that people are often talking about, that they try to remove. But when we have people like you, examples of people like you who go against those stereotypes and all the stigma held against you, I think that encourages and motivates other people. I know during our break you mentioned that you look for other means of inspiration, but in reality, when people watch this, they're going to see you hopefully as a means of inspiration to them. So I just wanted to mention that. So thank you for that.
And I honestly don't want people to be like, oh, I'm this cool. I'm just me. This is me. This is my life. This is how I live it. And I'm not special in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Nothing that I do is special. Not the way I live is special. It's just how I live. It's who I am.
Yeah. So you're saying, like, rather than say Wahbeh did this in spite of this, Wahbeh just did this.
Yes.
Okay.
So on the topic of inspiration, if you could go back 15 years, say, right, and tell your younger self something, or inspire your younger self in some way, right, some way that'll lead to a change, or lead you to a position that you want to be in now, right, what would you tell your younger self? And also on the other side of that, in 15 years, where do you see yourself, or where do you want to see yourself?
15 years ago, I would tell myself not to back down. Always, if you want to do something, go for it. Never Don't let what people say or do affect the way that affect what you want to do and what you want to accomplish in life. People might push you down and tell you no or not prevent you from doing stuff. You have to get back up, and if you really put your mind to it, you can achieve it. Many times people saw my disability and said, "No, since you have this disability, you are not allowed to participate in this thing." And I fought against it. I had to. The key thing with having a disability is advocacy. You have to advocate for yourself, and the people around you need to help you advocate. If you don't advocate for yourself, you're going to have a very tricky time navigating through your disability. The biggest advice I can give someone is to advocate. And if you know somebody that has a disability and they're having and they are struggling, to advocate for them, advocate advocate for their needs and wants.
I think if people don't advocate, like you're mentioning, then people would be so limited.
Mm-hmm.
Individuals with disabilities, like the stigma on them would actually, prophesize and it would actualize in itself. So I think by fighting the stigma and advocating, you see these surgeons doing these surgeries on a wheelchair. You hear amazing stories of people doing these amazing things. So advocacy is very important.
It seems like you have advocated a lot for yourself. Like you said, like you didn't really stand down and like let people try to get their way. And you said earlier how your parents also advocated for you. So would you say like in doing things differently, like even advocating even more, like on top of that, do you think like maybe there were times that maybe you could have done more? Or
yeah, definitely. There's always more room to grow and improve, and there's always things to advocate for in the disability. Like, there's a lot of social problems that are going wrong in the disability community, and if you don't advocate and fight it, there's not going to be change. And we are fighting for that change that we want to see to improve the lives of people with disabilities. Because I'm not saying the lives of people with disabilities are 100%, but they with advocacy and with the fight, they can change and they can be better.
I think when we say like not 100%, I think this is just my perspective. We each have a different 100%, if that makes sense, and a different potential to fulfill.
Yeah.
And I think when a person, based on the life that they're given and the cards that they're dealt, reaches their full potential, that's their 100%. So it's different. It's rather than having it be an idealized 100% for everybody, is just my perspective. I think we each have our own potential to fill, basically. But I just wanted to ask a question on the note of advocacy. How can the people watching this at home, or anyone who doesn't necessarily have a disability, how could they be an advocate?
The first thing to do is learn. Educate yourselves on people with disabilities. Right now, in this day and age, technology is very vast. You can do a Google search about people with disabilities. Thousands of stories come up. Thousands of stories of, like the stories I said about the wheelchairs being broken. Educate yourselves on the topics that mean the most to the people with disabilities, and then use your voice to help with them. Call your members of Congress. Call your representatives. Call your senators. Be that change that you want to see. Even in the local level, call the mayor. Call the city council. Be that change that you want to see. Dearborn is doing a good job with people with disabilities, but there's always room for that improvement. Like a big thing I feel like is missing is. So I talked about the wheelchair basketball. Did I talk about that?
Yeah.
Slightly, a little bit.
You said it was a travel team, so it wasn't even something that was in Dearborn, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't in Dearborn. So I had to travel out all the way into Ann Arbor or in Novi so I can access that. I had to go drive every Saturday to do that. Why can't there be a team here? Why can't Dearborn start their own team? there are a lot of people with disabilities in Dearborn. There's a lot of students with disabilities in Dearborn.
Can I just give a brief shout out to Blue Hands United for doing an awesome project where they're helping people with different disabilities play and interact in a multitude of sports. I recently helped out with kickball, but I'm sure they're going to do something with basketball. But yeah, not to take away anything that you're saying, this is a recent thing. And I think more efforts need to be done to implement different sports in our community and have more activities for individuals with disability to optimize inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier you were talking about how you'd have to go out of town for the basketball leagues, and we kind of said like this is something that's still being worked on. We're kind of adjusting to in Dearborn. What's one thing that in your memory or right now that you think Dearborn does really well for people who have disabilities?
I think Dearborn has a lot of good programs in place for people with disabilities. A great program that I was involved in was a program set by the police department that identified people with disabilities in our community, and in case of an emergency, the police and fire department and EMS knew before going to that house that there was a person with disability in the house. So they were able to know that there was a person with disability in the house, and they were able to modify what they needed to help that person. If a fire were to happen, they knew that somebody on the second floor was in a wheelchair and they needed assistance. So they knew to look out for that person.
That's amazing. Like, how long has that been in place for?
It's been in place, I think, for a couple of years now, and it's a registry that you sign up for. I don't know if it's still going on, but I signed up for it, and it's just something to keep on the back of your mind to make sure that everyone's getting out in case of an emergency safely and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, especially even just thinking back to this summer, how much our city flooded.
Yeah, with the floods.
Something like that would have.
Mm-hmm.
Is that at all related to like some of the signs I see, like when I'm driving around on the side streets, they have like a sign like handicapped child in area? Is that all related to that? Do you know what I'm referring to?
It says like the deaf kid in the neighborhood, like those signs alerts.
Yeah.
I think I know.
But I've seen just broadly like a person who's handicapped in the area, like they have a sign.
So for me, another program that I think it's been 5 years now, I petitioned. Going back to, I have a wheelchair accessible vehicle, and with that, I need space for that ramp to deploy so that I have access to get in and out of my vehicle. Side note, people that park on the cross lines, please don't do that. It makes life so difficult.
Wahbeh, one thing when you were talking about earlier, when you brought up the car, I remembered. So you said you had to do those extra programs where they had to evaluate you, and there were just like extra steps in the process. Did you have to pay for those out of pocket, or were like those covered?
So there are a lot of foundations available. There's a program called Kelly's Kids. It's through the doctor's office I go through, and you have to be a patient of that doctor's office or of that center, not specifically that doctor, but I believe so. I'm not actually sure. Cut that part out.
That sounds amazing because I got so
about like the doctor's office because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So it's I got funding through a program called Kelly's Kids, which is a fund created for children with disabilities, and she her name is Kelly Herman, and she does amazing kids with disabilities. She has a daughter with a disability. She herself has a daughter with a disability.
That's awesome. You know, I've seen a lot of scholarships at U of M offered for people with disabilities, something like that. Do you know of any scholarships like that? Hopefully in the future, not to make any promises, but it would be amazing if Dream is able to make a scholarship for people with disabilities. So that is something that we see in the future. I don't want to say near future, but hopefully in the future, that would be something amazing. And I think we need more of it in Dearborn. But I just wanted to hear more about your experiences with any scholarships like that, maybe at Wayne State or even at Fortson.
So I got So at Fortson, I did get a scholarship through playing wheelchair basketball. I did get a grant through a organization called Athletes Unlimited, which is an organization meant for athletes who have disabilities. So I got a scholarship through them, and then I got a scholarship through Fortin's PTA program.
Okay, that's amazing. We've asked a ton of questions, and I want to know if anyone else has any other questions. But if no one has any questions, we can move on to our final segment.
Rashad, you can do the honors.
Rashad, please do the honors of introducing our dream segment.
All right. So our dream segment consists of a single question, of course, that we can elaborate on and you can talk a lot about, but a single question that that kind of tailors to our name, right? Dream. What is your dream for the future? What is something you dream about? What is basically one of your goals that you have?
My dream is to advocate to live in a society where inclusion is a normal thing, where people with disabilities are it's not like a hassle to have a disability. It's not something that it's for people to be with disabilities for full inclusion for people with disabilities, whether it's in school, work, home life, whatever it is. I want them to have a life where they have that full inclusion and able to live as normal, quote unquote, as possible.
Very beautifully said. It's been a pleasure, Wahbeh.
Oh, thank you so much for having us.
If you can close us off.
Yeah, so if nobody has any other questions, we can end it off here.
No, I think just to kind of like debrief and talk about this, I think this was a well-needed conversation. I learned a lot. I think the people watching this at home are going to learn a lot. And I wish, like you mentioned, people are just more inclusive and are very transparent with conversations like these. Mm-hmm. I know we're sitting here formally in a podcast studio and talking about these conversations, but anyone could come up to you and have conversations like these. Yeah. Anyone can be your friend if they really want to. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that point. You were saying something?
No, it should be an open conversation where it's not. It shouldn't be a taboo subject. Disability should not be a taboo subject. Yeah. It should be a subject that is openly talked about wherever, whenever. Yeah.
All right, and with that, we'd like to give one huge thank you to Wahbeh Nusseibeh for joining us today on our podcast and sharing his story with us and Dearborn.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course.
Thank you for being open with us.
And thank you to our viewers as well watching this at home. We really appreciate you tuning in. Please make sure to follow our socials at Dream Dearborn. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and of course our main website. This has been Discovering Disabilities in Dearborn, and we'll see you on the next episode.